Hey folks, Steve here with another Deadly Woods video. In this video, we'll be looking at turns 11 and 12, and depending on how quickly we get through that, potentially the post-mortem might get thrown in here as well, or I may segment that off as a separate video, just so we can talk in a dedicated fashion to what I thought of the overall game flow. The post-mortem is really meant to talk through what I could have done better as each side as I played, and some of those strategic considerations that occurred over the course of the game, not a review, which we'll do a dedicated video for that in the future. So yeah, this should be a pretty short video. I hope we should be able to work our way through the game and finish it out pretty quickly. Somebody had mentioned in a comment that I talk a lot, which I suppose, yeah, if you look at a 2-hour-long video or an hour-long video or a 40-minute video of mine, you should assume that I will be talking on it for the duration of that video. It'd be a little strange if I recorded these videos completely silent and simply moved counters around. That'd be interesting. I'd put music on for you, but then there's copyright issues with that. So anyway, looking at the start of turn 11, there are some special things that we do need to keep in mind. So the last special turn thing we care about, which is SS withdrawals and check. So that's 12.10 of the rules. Basically, the way we need to deal with this is that at the asset phase of the turn, which is the very first thing we do in a turn in this game, the Germans need to count how many steps they have available that have a black circle with an 11 in it. This represents obviously turn 11, but SS units that would be withdrawn. So there are 2 assets in the asset box for the Germans, and then there are different SS Panzer units still on the board that have not been destroyed, or maybe they've suffered some step losses. And what you first have to do is a count. You have to count and determine how many steps you actually have. If there are fewer than 12 steps, then the German needs to have 3 victory points or they immediately lose the game. We have 3 victory points as the Germans, and I already did the count off camera. We have more than 12 steps left. So the Germans certainly are not going to lose the game at this point for that reason. Now, there's a few other cases within those rules now. If you have fewer than 12 steps, then there's some stuff. But we have, if there are more than 12 steps among the named units, and they are in supply, which is all true for us, they are now withdrawn from the game. If they were out of supply, then they remain in the game. If the German player has 3 or more victory points, which is true, the Germans may cancel the withdrawal. If they do, the Allies win the game unless the German player has 3 victory points or more at the end of turn 12. Now, looking back at the victory conditions, if we were to look back at that, if the withdrawal is not canceled and we let these extra units go, then the Germans only need 2 victory points to win the game. So for these last 2 turns, there's a little bit of a hedging some, you gotta make a gamble here, right? You're going to decide how much risk do we want to take on as the Germans in holding out. Now, a lot of these units with the black 11 are in the north. So I have a bunch. I have some here, some here, some here. I may have a few scattered about in a couple of places. Some of them in kind of important places as well. I got some here, here, less so down in the south. But if I decide, hey, I am going to let those guys withdraw, then we only need to hold, as the Germans, 2 victory points. So what this enables us to do, as the Germans, is if we want to If we want to give those units up, that means we could stand to lose one of these. We could lose Houffalize, which seems under the most direct threat at the moment. We could even, we could lose that, and as long as we retain Bastogne and Saint-Vith, then we're good to go. If we somehow lost Bastogne but managed to hold out by shuffling units into Houffalize and kept Saint-Vith, then we could win that way as well. We would only need 2. Now, if we decided, no, we need all these units, then our problem is we need all 3. We need to keep all 3. We can't afford to lose any single one of these. So, what are the Germans going to do? I think in this situation, with Houffalize under such direct threat, it's either, all it's going to take is one really good die roll with the right circumstances for the Allies, and they take Houffalize. Whether or not I stack it up with a bunch of units or not, if the right retreat result gets rolled, then the Germans will lose the game because they need all 3 and they won't have all 3. So I think we are going to make the action or make the decision and take the action to withdraw all of those units. Now, it means we also lose some of our artillery capacity, so that's going to be a bit of a tricky thing. But I think we need to do it. That's our best path to keeping victory in grasp, is having 2 victory points. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove those units before we get too much further. Now, while I do that, the reality is the Allies are going to get 1 replacement step each for their units. As I'm looking around, trying to see where that makes the most sense to try for, I think we want to do it down here. Since Bastogne, basically, any which way we look at it, we kind of need to take Bastogne as the Allies to win. So Allied reinforcements are going to go there, and then quick looking at the chits for the turn over here. The supply checks as usual. The Germans get a move and a combat. The Allies get their 2 movement or combat chits, and the Monty or Patton-sided chit. And that's it. That is truly it. The Allies still have initiative, so they'll get to pick what chit they want to use. But what I'll do off camera is I will withdraw those German units, and then I will have picked the first Allied chit, the initiative chit, and I will have executed that chit. And we'll see just how things came out and how bad the Germans are on the back heel. Okay, so I decided to just go ahead and have the Allies do movement so that they can try to get just a little bit better off of a situation for some of these attacks, because what we're really going to try to do is just force the Germans back as much as possible and have the opportunity for multiple attacks across either the Patton, Monty Chit, and the regular combat, and hopefully put the Germans in such a position that they're just really not going to be able to hold on, I guess, is the objective, but we'll see how that goes. So we'll go ahead and put all the chits in the cup, and we'll see what else comes out. Maybe this would be, I'm just going to call it out, maybe one mistake would have been, maybe I should do combat instead of movement here, but I did movement, so it's too late. That would be the one mistake I could see. If I'm upset later because the Allies couldn't get into Bastogne or something, or couldn't get into Houffalize properly, this is going to be my irritation, is because I made this move instead of a combat. Maybe that would have been better. I don't know. Tough decisions, deep thinking. Okay, first chit is supply, which the Germans are fine. Going back to the cup again. And we have the Patton or Monty chit. This is tough. It's basically forcing me to pick. Do I try to make progress over here along this little line here, or do I make progress up here? Uh, I think we got to do Monty, and I think we need to get into Houffalize now before it's too late. Um, so this chit enables our 7th and uh, British units to attack. And as I kind of just look around, I don't always have a great roll for this, but do 9, 12, 22, 22 to 9. Interesting. And then we throw in, throw in all of our artillery that we can, which would be 8. So 30 to 9, which is going to force the Germans to have to use their artillery, and they will certainly do that. So knowing that it is a town. Oh, man. Okay, so if the Germans use their artillery, they would end up having 11. Let's see, 9, 9. Oh, I'm sorry, 13. So 30 to 13. It's still 2 to 1 odds. So let's see if the Allies can get a result. A DR star would be fantastic. They won a 6. That's almost 6. That's a 5 is a DR. I do not believe the Germans have any capability to avoid this. They have to take the retreat, I believe. I guess they technically had 14 combat factors, but it all is still the same. So we would advance after combat. All these guys here. So there you go. So now the Germans are down to 2 victory points. Now the Germans could still win, so we need to take either Saint-Vith or Bastogne to win the game as the Allies, but we're making progress here. And then I could attack somewhere over here. And it's what? 7, 10, 16, 16 to 5, 3 to 1 gets reduced to 2 to 1. Germans aren't going to use artillery. Allies can't. It's a 3, a BL1. So they'll do that. And that's really, I guess there's one other set of attacks that we could do, which would be up here. It would only be these 2 stacks, so it would be 5, 11, attacking 3. So 11 to 3 is 3 to 1. Then the woods knocks it down to 2 to 1. I think we want to roll on that. And that's a DR star, so that's a loss for the Germans, and they retreat 2 hexes to Saint-Vith, and these guys advance after combat. So that's a pretty good roll, all things considered, for the Allies. And I think that's all the attacks I can really afford to make. So the restriction of Monty being you get an extra attack, which is great, and you get to activate the British and the 7th Corps. So you can get a decent number of units, and then the con for Patton is, I mean, you can do movement and combat, but you can see how like I've kind of tied up too many units of the third corps right now because he can only activate the third corps. And this was maybe a mistake on my part. I should have done something better, or should vacate some of this over here. We can't leave Luxembourg. We can't let the Germans have a freebie, so we have to keep that defended, and we're sort of locked in there. But we would only be activating these guys really, and this guy, I guess, for any actions, and that just doesn't work. But I think that was a good shit for the Allies. They managed to take a victory hex, and the Germans could probably try to counterattack later in the turn. And they'll certainly try, I would bet, but it will probably be tough, I think, for the Germans on that. So, okay, next ship in the cup will come out, and it is German mover combat. I think they need to do movement for sure. German's definitely going to do movement, and I'll take care of that off camera. Okay, here we are after the German move. We had the motorized infantry kind of run up over here, trying to get closer to Bastogne. We had an emergency withdrawal situation happen a little bit so we could get into Bastogne. Some additional defenders while still leaving guys behind to just be a speed bump. We've moved units up to hopefully attempt an attack on a counterattack on Houffalize, and we've tried to solidify our line by Saint-Vith. We're continuing to retract the German line here, and in effect giving us some extra steps to try to put in front of the victory point hexes. We're giving up a flank. The Allies, if they wanted to, could try to start coming down over here. It doesn't really get them much. It doesn't do much because the Germans basically have so many supply paths off to the east side of the map. It doesn't really matter if the Allies begin to encircle the whole set here. Like if they come around here, it just doesn't do as much for them than you might think. So the focus remains on the victory point towns, but the situation is not looking good for the Germans very much at all, obviously. So we'll go to the cup. Anybody's chip. And we get allied combat. We could do movement if we wanted to, but we're going to have allied combat. The Germans are bummed. They would have wanted a chance to counterattack Houffalize, but I think what's going to happen, this might be the turn that helps decide the game. We're going to see Houffalize secured by taking some of the hexes around it, quite possibly, or at least some of the hexes around it, and making it tougher for the Germans to try to take it back. We're going to see some additional attempts to push through down here. Over here doesn't really matter as much, but definitely going to try to collapse this so that the Allies are right next to Bastogne before the turn is up. And so this is the last Allied action, but they're basically setting themselves up to succeed in taking Bastogne on the very last turn of the game. At least that's what they're hoping. So I'm going to take care of these combats over here. The Germans basically have one artillery chit left that they can use around here, and they're definitely going to need it at this point. And we'll see how it goes from there. So we'll be right back. Okay, here we are after the Allied combats. They've made some gains here. They've pushed through up here, so they can begin to think about coming around behind to Saint-Vith, which is going to force the Germans to pull down even harder. They did take a hex over here, so they're increasing the chance that Houffalize will hold against a German counterattack. So progression here, very important. And then we did push some guys back and eliminate some guys right here. So now the Allies are basically one move away from having two hexes attacking Bastogne at the very least, and we just couldn't quite get any further over here at the moment. But pretty good combat ship for the Allies. They're feeling pretty good about that. The Germans just are starting to run out of gas. There's not much more they can defend with. They've got a lot of single steps in some areas. I guess what I could do, I didn't, this would be one last attack I could try, would be like maybe ill-advised, but it's like, oh, I could do 5 to 2. That's 2 to 1. Comes a 1 to 1. We'll take a single step loss. Yeah, sure, that's a BL1. So these guys take a step loss, are eliminated. Just take a step loss and advance after combat. So there you go. Now we're causing some problems because these guys are out of supply. One more attack to seal the deal, and now those guys are out of supply. That's what was needed. I think I am probably underestimating the value in doing low odds attacks as the allies, because they can, where it's not terribly important and they're not at risk of losing something, in particular, they could take a step loss or two if it means the German line starts to disintegrate. And now, like I just said, because we're projecting Zocs here and here, um, and you can't get across the river line, these two sets of units are out of supply, which means, the Allies have kind of found a way to push through the German line and ensure that we're going to keep Houffalize very likely. Last couple of chits. This will really matter for a couple of things. So we pull, and it is the German combat chit. So they have the potential to try to fix something out here. What can they do? Are there any attacks that could resolve the situation? Well, all these units are still in supply technically over here, so they could try to attack here and knock him back. But the Allied artillery is going to make that pretty difficult. So the last chit in the cup is going to be supply. So whatever we decide to do with attacks, we'll resolve that, and then we'll show if anyone else is out of supply. Well, here we are after the German attack. They didn't have much that they could really do. I mean, it was a possibility. Hey, do we go for broke against? Go for broke against Luxembourg, but that wasn't going to work very well based on what I could find. Well, actually, I don't know. So let's say we tried it. It would be, let's see, 6 plus 4 would be 10. They would be attacking with 7. 7 to 10 is 1 to 2. And then 7 to 10, 1 to 2. Yeah, no, they can't do Luxembourg still due to the engineers there. It's so important to have the engineers there in Luxembourg. It just shuts all the German capability down because of the river and everything else. Okay, so yeah, we actually, the Germans retook Houffalize. They managed to roll on a 1 to 2. This is an important thing to note. On a 1 to 2 odds, which is ordinarily you would say that's pretty bad, and it is bad, but they went for broke, and you have a 33% chance of forcing the defender to retreat, which, amazingly enough, they were able to do. So they came in and they took action. They managed to do it. I'm a little worried now that I'm thinking. I'm like, wait a minute. When they got kicked out of here, did I retreat them the right number of spaces that they were able to come back? I guess they did. I think they did. Right, because the Germans had a move action. Right, yes. Okay, so we're okay there. The Germans failed to break out of this situation, so these guys are now out of supply. And the Germans did not want to give up any steps over here, so nothing could happen, and they couldn't do a move action, really. Well, I guess technically they could do a 1 hex move, but their problem is they have stacking problems through Summa here. So this guy would love to get into Bastogne, but that's too many steps for the stacking limit. So they have as much in Bastogne right now as they can handle. They need a move action to try to configure things better. And that's it for turn 11. So we're just going to jump right into turn 12. The asset markers, I do not think there's much more that we can really do or change the situation for. The only thing I could think of would be if we put the motorized infantry marker on some poor soul over here. And maybe he could zoom down the road into Saint Vith if we had to. So 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe try to put these guys back into supply at some point. There's not any other prep work that really needs done. The Allies do get some replacements, so I think we would look to see a replacement over here just to get another combat factor. And then another factor maybe over here. So the real question is going to be, will we be able to get into Bastogne and Houffalize in the number of combats we have this turn? This is it. We are down to the wire now for the game. What chits are going to be in the cup? Well, same as last time. 2 German for movement and combat. The 2 supply checks. And move combat for the Allies and the Monty or patent chit. Right now, unfortunately, we kind of need both to be able to do the things that we really need to do. And so, what is the best thing that the Allies could do right now? I'll put the rest of the German stuff in the cup, and let's talk about this, because I think this is going to be the crux of the game. The Germans are going to get to go. They're going to get 1 combat, and they're going to get 1 move. We get potentially 2 movements, 1 combat. We do something like this. But what do we need to do? We need to really think through the chits and what order they could come in to determine victory. If we did a combat chit right out of the gate, we would have a pretty good chance of taking Houffalize. Saint Vith is probably not going to happen. We're probably not going to take it. So it's going to come down to here and here. This is where the whole game is going to be decided. What's in there now in Bastogne is 9 combat factors. Right now, we could attack with 11. And so that could be a pretty gnarly combat, but it's feasible we could get a retreat. It would be a whole lot better if we could move units up, because then we would have the ability to get a whole lot more factors on Bastogne and have a higher chance of taking it. But what we really need to do is also take Houffalize. So it's like we have to figure out what's the right thing. If we do a movement first, what I'm thinking is we leave the chit to the Monty side, so we guarantee at least that around Houffalize we get 2 combats. We need at least 1 combat. But to me, it is going to really come down to, do we want to have combat first or movement first? One tricky thing is, for the Germans, they're not going to be able to get any more guys into Houffalize. We've effectively surrounded it. This guy's got Zoc problems. He's going to have a hard time getting... the Germans really can't get anyone else in here. So we could afford going to move first and guaranteeing these next set of combats will work. We need this combat, at least for Bastogne, and then we need the Monty combat. The 1 combat might get us enough that we don't need the other combat as much, but we don't know which one will come out first if we do movement first, right? But I'd rather have 1 to 2 good shots on Bastogne either way. So I think, and this will be me cursing, maybe I'm going to do movement because I want to get these guys up next to Bastogne so we have a much better chance of attacking. That's what I'm going to do. We're going to do movement, and we'll see what the game gives us. What's interesting is it definitely has a feeling like the game is down to the wire, and it's going to come down to maybe a handful of chits. It's going to maybe come down to a few die rolls. Maybe if one side had done just way better the whole game, it wouldn't be down to the wire like this.
And then somebody's going to say, hey, it all comes down to one die roll of whether or not you win the game. If we don't roll a retreat for Bastogne, the Germans might win. Um, should it come down to simple die rolls like that? Well, maybe your game will be different. Who knows? I mean, in this given situation, me against myself, I fought myself down to the wire here, and I can only leave it to fate to decide, I guess, how this is going to shake out. So let me take care of the movement, and we'll come back for the next chip pull. Okay, here's the allied move complete. You can see, I mean, we've got everything lined up. Some of the stacking is quite high because you have an entire formation plus one more unit, so that can be actually quite a number of units all in one stack. Um, I think we're looking pretty good as long as the chits come out in the order most advantageous to the allies. I guess that's the real key thing. Um, the other thing that I kind of wish I could have achieved, as I look at the situation, like it would have been great to get the allies snuck up through here and cut supply lines. Um, but we would have had to have gotten way in the backfield to do that, and that just never happened. So I'm going to pull the chit, and this will be important. Whatever I pull out of here is going to be really important to how the game shakes out. I pull the Patton or the Monty Chit. So this is actually the least good draw because I would have really rather had another one. Would have really liked a different one because it means we're going to have less shots at uh, some of these areas. So here's the choice. We use Patton, and we maybe attack somewhere around here, or I think we have to use the Monty side. I think we have to because the attack on Houffalize is going to be with Patton, and that's all that's what we have to do. I mean, that this it sucks. This was the order, but this is the order that we need to have. And I'm going to tell you right now that it's going to be an attack. It's going to be on Houffalize. They have 9 factors in there. They're going to throw in 4 to defend. I'm certain, so that's functionally 14. But we would be attacking with 9, 12, 14, 16, 20 there. And then another 10, so 30. And we look at 14, 30 to 14 is 2 to 1. We don't get any benefit from throwing any more artillery in there, so I guess there's not much point. Even if we did, I don't think it would make a difference. You can throw in 8 more, but 38 to 14 is still 2 to 1 odds. So we're at 2 to 1 odds, and we need to roll a 5 or a 6 basically. We need to roll a 5 or a 6, and we do not. We get a no result. A no result. That is a problem. That is a pretty big problem. Are there any other attacks we would want to make over here? We have 6 against 4. Be 2 to 1 odds. Go ahead and roll it and see what happens. Also no result. Gosh, all right. Well, that sucks. This could mean the Germans win the game because, well, we still have another combat chance. This next chit has to be German, and it is. So let's see. Do we do movement? Do we do combat? I think we need a combat for later in case the Allies take one of the hexes. So we're going to make it a move. And this will be a move to reinforce. We can't get any more guys in here, so that's full up. We can't do anything about that. And can we stack anything more in here? Well, the only way we could do it is if by increasing the units that are already here of the same formation, basically. So right now there's 9 defending factors. We could actually shift units around to make that better. So if I move this guy out to go into this hex, move the lair unit down, move that guy like so, and that puts us at 16 in Bastogne. And I've arranged it. There's some weak guys around here, but that's all we really need to do. And if we're just situated something like that, I think the order of operations, depending on how this move would have had to have occurred, might mean I have to leave somebody out. But moved this guy up, this guy down. This guy over. Yeah, I think this is all legal. I think this is a legal move. Let me check the stacking rules. Play at the end of each movement round. Okay. Okay, so that's a legal move. And then we just make that work. And I think that would be sufficient to at least hold things back for the Germans. Okay, next check. German supply check, not a problem. Anybody who's out of supply is still out of supply. And then we get the Allied combat. This is the last Allied chit. So here's what's important as a result of this. The Allied artillery, all available. The Germans have 1 artillery asset left with a 3 combat factor, and they've got 2 hexes to defend. The Allies have to attack both. They have to take both in this action. So let me take myself off camera for a second and try to do some number calculation and figure out what everyone's best move is. But this is it. This is the last chit. And then what will happen is, if the Allies can take Houffalize, if they can take Bastogne, the Germans are going to get 1 more action chit to try to take them back. But they're going to be out of a lot of their resources. They'll have some rocket artillery that they could maybe use. So looking like Germany might be able to eke out a point victory here, but just so. So let me take some time on this. Okay, here we are with all of the combats figured out. So it's really going to boil down to the attack on Houffalize, the attack on Bastogne. And the Allies need to take both this action chit or the game is lost. So what will happen is, if they succeed in taking both, they need both, they can't get only one, then they'll do subsequent attacks to weaken the Germans across the board. But we don't want to bother doing that until basically, well, shit. Okay, here we are partway through the Allied combat before the big show. I tried to attack here to force these guys back and maybe create a situation where we could cut Bastogne out of supply, or at least get them surrounded or something. But it probably wouldn't have done any good anyway, because they would have still been considered in supply due to the supply check. So I don't know. I tried 1 hex to 1 hex, didn't really work out. We forced a retreat over here, but that doesn't really help us. And now this stack is done attacking. They were originally here. So we still have the same attacks that I had originally intended, which is here and here, attacking here. and here, attacking here. Now I've worked out all the math. I'm pretty sure I worked out all the math right. 38 allied factors, including 2 artillery against Houffalize. The Germans altogether have 13 combat factors. The Allies were frustratingly, one factor away from having 3-to-1 odds on 13. 3 times 13 is 39. We have 38. Horrifically annoying that I didn't think hard enough to figure out a way to get another step or unit over here, and I didn't realize it was going to be so close. So that's bad planning on my part. So it boils down to a 2-to-1. So we need a 5 or a 6 to retreat. BL1 will not be enough. So we have a 30% chance, 33% chance of taking Houffalize. And then down here at Bastogne, we have 34 allied factors from these 2 hexes, which is quite good, plus 8 from 2 artillery pieces were thrown in. The Germans had thrown in this artillery piece up here, and I'm showing it on camera just to show you how we got to the 13. But that was the last one they have. So these guys are going without artillery support, but they're defending in a town, which gives them a defender shift. So it's 16 factors in there, 34 to 16. That's 2-to-1. One shift to the left gives us 1-to-1 odds. And basically, I need to roll a 5 and a 6 in a row, a 5 or a 6 twice in a row to win the game as the Allies. That's basically what we've boiled down to. My poor play as the Allies has put us in this position. I would not have wanted to be in this position at all, but I did not think through. I guess I should. I could have just done a better job of managing the Allies' reinforcements. Like once it got to, oh, we've got so many reinforcements, we've got so many guys. I took that for granted, and their position is just way better their position is much worse than I thought because I just didn't strategize the movement right. Instead of sending this armor up through here, I should have had them come up behind here and had these armor more to the left than over far to the right, where they just never managed to break open a hole to disrupt supply, and they would have taken a couple of combats to do it anyway, which is why I didn't try here. So, yeah, I mean, coulda, woulda, shoulda. So let's roll the die. We'll do it on camera, make it eventful. The 2-to-1 roll, we need a 5 or a 6. And that is not it. The Allies lose the game. We'll play it all the way through, right? So that's a BL1 up here. We'll go ahead and take it off this unit here. Just lose it off this infantry, no big deal. Germans retain control of the victory point. And then we could still attack here. I mean, why not? And we rolled a 1. Well, so much for that, huh, guys? So it doesn't really matter where we take it. We'll just lose that step. No other attacks would make a difference. I'm trying to figure out. I had already tried to attack here to here to put it out of supply, and I failed. I got a no result. And is there anything else that I could do to put Bastogne or here out of supply? I don't think so. So that really is the end. That's it. We lost as the Allies. So that combat is over. It doesn't matter if we attack anywhere else, even if we tried to attack towards Saint-Vith, it wouldn't matter because we wouldn't have the movement to get into Saint-Vith. So if we just pull the last chits, doesn't really matter what order. Supply chit. Germany is in supply, not a problem. German attack chit. Germans decide they will not do any attacks at all because they have won. They have Saint-Vith. They have Houffalize, though just barely, and they just barely have control of Bastogne still. And that's 3 victory points. Technically, they only needed 2. So they managed to do well enough on defense that they survived the Allied onslaught. Now, obviously, if you were looking at this from the big scheme of things, the Allies would eventually overwhelm the Germans. But because we are on a different, the clock has run out. This has some level of impact on the progression of the West Front. You know, think of any other butterfly effects you might think of here. But the main thing is the Germans just did a little bit better than history, that they didn't get pushed all the way back to the West Wall to hold these important crossroads to whatever strategic benefit. Probably not much, but that's the game for you. So there we go. That's it. That's the end, guys. That's the end of turn 12. That's the end of the game. The Germans have eked out a survival victory. I, without getting into the postmortem too much, I will say it is probably because in these last three turns, I just did not spend the time to figure out the just very best way to have my US units set up. Really, I wasted too much time with guys trying to push through here. I mean, it was important to do that at first, but I really should have rerouted them north and just tried to overwhelm them. Either way, you still run out of space to work with, and you have to try to push guys back. And it just didn't work as well. I didn't move fast enough. I was so close. If the chits had come out in a different order, maybe that might have made the difference, and we would have done better. But that's the rub. That's the rub, guys. Okay, well, thanks for watching. The next video I'll do will be a post-mortem, where I'll just sort of talk about the game feel. Not a review by any means, but we'll just have a chill conversation about how the game went and the strategies and the elements of the game. And then we'll eventually get to a review in the not too distant future. So thanks for watching, guys. Take care. Keep on gaming.